And good morning, welcome in Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans into another edition of the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast, Scholasticks. I'm your host, Graham the G-Show Forsyth. We are brought to you by Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Terrico Movement Fitness and Performance Goaltenders, and Elite Prospects. Excited for today's show. We're going to recap the first round of the Platinum Promotions Division, and then I'm going to get into my predictions for the Winnipeg Free Press and Price Division playoffs, which will be starting this week. Of course, no action yesterday throughout the league due to it being Louis Riel Day, aka Family Day. I hope y'all had a good one, and happy to have you here on this Tuesday morning. We got 3 games on the schedule this week, all Platinum Promotions Division playoff matchups. We will be starting our coverage in the B and C division next week once we get into semifinals of the A Div, which, speaking of that, we'll show you. Well, there's the standings, but in terms of the bracket, here's how it played out. We went about 3 for 5 on our predictions. Well, on my predictions, I had Steinbach and CGS right, as well as I called the Royals upset against the River East Kodiaks, but I was wrong about Miles Mack against Bellevue. Same with St. Paul's against Garden City. St. Paul's taking down Garden City was the biggest upset of round 1 outside of the Royals taking down the River East Kodiaks. But I'll get into all of those round 1 matchups here coming up on this edition of Scholastics and much more as our playoff coverage continues here as, well, the real games are finally here, Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans. And it's been, well, quite immaculate in terms of the vibe so far. I've loved to see the support from the schools at this point, hoping to see that continue to grow stronger as time goes along here. But as time goes along on this podcast, we're going to get into all of our predictions and analysis on this edition of Scholastics on this Tuesday morning for episode 15.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
And welcome back, and let's get right into it as we take a look at the opening standings for the A Division playoffs. Steinbach and CGS on top, of course, with 2-0 records. Same with Lord Selkirk. Miles Mack needed overtime to defeat Bellevue in what was, well, I'd say honestly the most exciting matchup I've been a part of so far. Just so intense, close game, drama in the end with Bellevue tying it to save their season with 4.6 seconds remaining in regulation, but in the end, Miles Mack, Justin Rock would put home the game winner to send Miles Mack into the next round, where they'll be taking on Sturgeon Heights. Sturgeon, Vincent Massey, as well as Oak Park all got buys into the next round, given that they were the top 3 seeds. But I guess I'll go from top to bottom here. College Bellevue out in the first round of the playoffs against Miles Mack. Picked Bellevue to win just because on paper they had better offensive numbers. This was a team that gave up quite a few shots as this season went along. One of the worst teams in that category this year, and also the most penalized team in B Division heading into that round 1 matchup. And gotta give a shout out to their goaltenders first off, Nathan Holmsen, Ethan Windsor, grade 9 players that gave their team a chance in both of these games. But although Bellevue was able to extend game number 2 and send it into overtime. Miles Mack is able to generate a chance off the rush and go after a rebound and put it into the back of the net. Rocks series winner. And I feel like in that game, of course, game 1, Belleville was able to outshoot Miles Mack. But I just feel like all season long for Belleville, they had all the pieces, I think, to be one of the more dominant teams in the league this year. It just never came to fruition for whatever reason. They had their chances against Miles Mack, but limited zone time in game number 2. When you're on your heels and giving up as many shots as they did in an elimination game like that, sooner or later, things are going to come back to bite you, and they did for Belleville in the end in overtime. But I think still got to be proud about the season that they had, just due to the fact that this was the first time ever that Belleville finished over 500 in a division. Played a hard-fought 2 games, but unfortunately for them, they're going home. For Miles Mack, a big fan of their pace throughout that series in that game 2. Thought that they got some good offensive zone time going for them. And Sergei Butov in goal. He was a big difference maker in this series. As we take a look at the statistics throughout round 1, he was one of the best goaltenders with a .956 save percentage and a 2-0 record. So obviously Miles Mack is going to need to continue to get great goaltending into the next round. They'll need to continue to play with that type of pace they did against Belleville, because I feel like Sturgeon Heights might be a bit less forgiving compared to Belleville, just based on how good they've been this season. In terms of Steinbach, Shaftesbury, kind of had a feeling this series would go the way it did. Steinbach making short work of Shaftesbury, shutting them out in their first game on Wednesday, and then taking home the series win 6-1. For Steinbach, I think what was on display for them throughout this series was the fact that they had their depth scoring going, and their number 1 goaltender in Casha Moore, who got both starts, was locked in. They're going to get a much tougher matchup in the next series against a CGS team that plays with a lot of pace, has some game breakers themselves, but overall a really good start for Steinbach. 10 goals for, only 1 goal against a team that you were supposed to beat. You went out, took care of business, and had an even better offensive output in game 2 in a series closing game, which those are usually the hardest to win in a series. But Steinbach, good defense, good overall offense throughout that first round, and in a series which I feel like they were expected to go through, they answered those expectations. As for CJS and Westwood, talked about Braxton Taylor, how he was going to have to be a game breaker, an X factor for Westwood in this series, and he had both of their goals, so that did go into play. But just overall, CJS, too much for Westwood to handle throughout this series. When CJS started to get their game going at the high level that they play at, Westwood didn't have many answers, but I feel like Westwood showed a lot of fight, grit in that first game. Wheels just kind of fell off as CGS took over in the third period, and I feel like that was probably CGS's biggest strength in this series, their ability to take over and to be able to neutralize their opponent, put up the types of chances they did, and they had an even better game number 2. I mean, only holding Westwood to about 13 shots. So CJS, a team that playing their best hockey at the end of the season, a team that took care of business against last year's finalists in the Westwood Warriors. So yeah, CJS setting up a matchup with the Steinbach Sabres in the next round, as that series is going to get going on Wednesday. As for a series that's going to get going today, it'll be Sturgeon Heights and Miles Mack. Same with, just taking a look back here. Other series that's going to get going today will be Vincent Massey and Lord Selkirk, which we'll talk about that series coming up next, them being able to take down River East. And if you take a look at the goaltender statistics throughout that first round of A Division playoffs, the top would be the 2 netminders for Lord Selkirk, Ryland Giroux and Owen Coe. Coe got the start in game 2 when his team faced 52 shots. He was perfect. Same with Rylan Giroux. Talked about this team, why I had them in an upset, just in terms of, well, their defensive play, but more so their goaltending, and their goaltending really showed out in this series. It seemed like River East, I mean, throughout the two games, they were able to outplay Lord Selkirk, drove most of the pace, dictated most of the games, but I feel like there were a lot of times when River East, they were shooting for quantity, not as much quality. They were getting to the right spots, but I felt like there were very few times where they had the necessary traffic, the pieces in front of the net to be able to really make a difference throughout this series as it went along, just based off of the quality of their chances and their shots. And in a series like that, when you're outplaying a team like River East was, putting up all the shots and you can't score, you start to get frustrated. And then, well, we start to see, Lord Selkirk playing that type of rope-a-dope style, being able to go away and make good off of their rushes. And once they start to get some offensive zone time, they're that much more dangerous, and being able to capitalize on their chances at a high level throughout this series themselves. So, riding big time goaltending performances from both Rylan Giroux and Owen Coe, frustrating the River East offense, and being able to truly be opportunistic throughout this series was the recipe for Lord Selkirk, and they came through big time and pulled off an upset. A team that is a bit of a sleeper heading into this playoffs, I'd say, in the A Div, given their seed and just how good their goaltending is. They got some players that delivered at a high level. Their captain and Deer scoring both goals in that series clinching game, and Lord Selkirk, the only team heading into the next round that hasn't given up a goal yet. They'll need that goaltending to improve. But not only that, they'll need to find another gear in their game if they want to move on, as Vincent Mousy, the defending champs, are ready for them. No doubt about that, as that series starts today at the Max Bell Center. As for Garden City and St. Paul's, in a series which, honestly, I could have seen St. Paul's upsetting, but I went with Garden City instead. Garden City took the first game by a score of 4-1, but then St. Paul's found their game throughout this series, coming back, answering back with, well, as we can see here, a 4-0 victory on elimination day, and then in game 3 they're able to take down Garden City in a back and forth OT game, as we can see there. In terms of the statistics, players like Davis Kroot stepping up big time for St. Paul. Same with Brady Kamoski in that first round series. St. Paul's will need them to continue their strong play heading into round 2 against who's the number 1 seed in the Platinum Promotions division this season in Oak Park. But St. Paul's proved that seeding doesn't really matter. The biggest upset of this playoffs to this point, beating the 6th seed in the Garden City Gophers, who, for them, had a lot of pieces, a lot of things going for them, I think, heading into the playoffs, just with how their goaltending was continuing to improve, all that good stuff. But when you take a look at St. Paul's, and I've said this before, but I felt like they were one of the, I guess not, I'm trying to think of the word. I felt like they were playing a lot better as the season went along, playing their best hockey heading into the postseason. A team that has been defense first this year, but has kind of lacked some offense along the way, right? Like, their offensive numbers weren't great throughout this season. But defense, it can win championships. That's an old cliche that I feel like has been spouted throughout the test of time. But when you take a look at St. Paul's, what they were able to do in this series in particular is, just trying to find the statistics right now for this group on the website. But yeah, I mean, looking at their goaltending, Michael Kenny playing in this series had a 9.32 save percentage through the first round. Also had a shutout, and for him, he's going to give St. Paul's a chance heading forward throughout the playoffs. A big chance to be able to potentially pull off more upsets, but looking at where Garden City fell short in this series, players like Marcus Betts stepped up big time with 3 goals, 5 points. I believe he's the points leader through the playoffs right now. Nick Bessick with 2 goals as well. Same with Tracy Ronan and Max Betts. But St. Paul's being able to limit most of the top-end talent from this Garden City team was always going to be huge throughout this series. How they could limit not only that top line, but their forwards, and they did that pretty good throughout round 1. Got big-time goaltending performances from Michael Kenny, and players stepping up on the front end of things. Even their defenseman, who I believe led the team in points this year, in Kamowski. All those things coming together for St. Paul's in a hard-fought series as they're on to the next round, where they'll be taking on the number 1 seed in the Oak Park Raiders, as that series will get going coming up today, or rather tomorrow, at Eric Coy Arena. We're going to have Game 2 for you on Thursday, St. Paul's and Oak Park fans, so that should be a lot of fun. We're going to have Steinbach and CGS tomorrow, and then our first game to open up round 2, the quarterfinals, will be Sturgeon Heights and Miles Mac. I'm not going to make any more predictions because I've already gotten some wrong in terms of this division in particular. But as for the other divisions that we'll be getting into right away, the Winnipeg Free Press division and the Price division, I'm going to be giving my predictions, my take on how things are going to play out this postseason in B and in C. We're going to send it to another commercial break, the same one as you've already seen from Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, and we're going to continue along here on another playoff edition of Scholastics here on your home for Winnipeg High School Hockey League content on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
And welcome back to the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast, Scholastics. Forgot about something in terms of a big snowstorm coming this week. It is still February, so I guess fair. For the most part this winter, I mean, it's been really cold at points, but it's been feeling like spring as of late, to be honest with you, so yeah, Mother Nature not quite done with us yet here in Manitoba. But if that is the case and we're unable to get to Steinbach and CJS tomorrow, don't know if we'll be doing a game tomorrow just based off of the locations in the Platinum Promotions division. So we may actually have a Winnipeg Free Press division game for you, or a Price division game, depending on, what happens with the weather. Hoping that everyone stays safe out there, those that are traveling on roads and whatnot. But yeah, as for us here on the podcast, we roll on and taking a look at the final Winnipeg Free Press division standings. So, College, Louis-Riel, Springfield, Dakota, and Calvin, since it's a 12-team bracket, they will all get buys into the next round. In terms of the other matchups, Churchill will be taking on Leo Remillard. For Gabrois, they're going to get SJR, the 7th seed in the Sanford Sabres, get the 10th seed in the CPEC Canadians, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and then the 8th seed in the J.H. Bruns Broncos get the Stonewall Rams. Before we get into the price division, we'll just predict all of these matchups. So starting off with Broncos and Stonewall. Both of these teams played at the very start of the season, and taking a look back at both those matchups, they both went into extra time, where J.H. Bruns was able to come away with, well, a victory in OT, 7-6, back on October 15th, and then on October 17th, their last matchup, it was actually Stonewall that was able to take it in a shootout. So they split the season series 1-1. In my opinion, though, I take a look at overall statistics from both of these teams. Both teams, I think, have similar depth compared to each other. Maybe it looks like on paper J.H. Bruns is a bit more top heavy, but this season they put up about 8 more goals compared to Stonewall, were a bit better defensively, and also the least penalized team. J.H. Bruns, in their most recent matchup that we saw them against Sanford, and I like the pace that they played with. They got pretty solid goaltending. So honestly, I could see this series, just given that Stonewall is a team that, they can play really tough and really hard, and did play J.H. Bruns hard this season. I'm leaning towards J.H. Bruns just based off of the few factors that I just talked about. I got them moving on in 3 games, but that one could go either way, as the 8 and 9 series always does. And hey, looking back at the Platinum Promotions division when I called Bellevaux to win over Miles Mack, Bellevaux had the better statistics on paper, right? But in terms of offense and defense, but it didn't matter in the end, as Miles Mack was able to edge them out in 2 games. So, all with that being said, I'm still going with J.H. Bruns to move through into the next round. As for Churchill and CSLR, they ended up finishing 2 wins back of Calvin for that 4th seed. They end up getting the 5th seed, and for Churchill, a team that plays well together, a team that this season, when you take a look at their statistics, they very much do it by committee. Their highest goal scorer would be Owen Hamilton, who has 10 goals, and then down the middle, I mean, it's just, you got a lot of players with similar numbers. And then Kyron Broughton on the defensive end of things, a point per game as a defenseman. That's always great to be able to get that if you're, coaching a team like Churchill. And then just in terms of goaltending, Devin Picklick, even though he has a 6-7 record, had himself a shutout on the season and a .909 save percentage. I just feel like taking a look at the depth of this Churchill team, and given that they were able to go out and put some good performances together as the season went along, compared to a team like CSLR, which when the last time these two teams faced, that was back on Tuesday, January 13th, CSLR did only come within a goal of beating them, but in the end fell short. I just look at these teams and look at the season that CSLR has had. Sure, they have a game breaker in Newberry. They have an 11-goal scorer in Kane LaMonica, but goaltending-wise, defensively, as a team defending, it just hasn't been great for them this season. They've lacked offense compared to last year's team that made it to the finals run. And as good as Newberry is, they are still missing a few game breakers from last year's team. I forget his name off the top of my head, but they had the leading point getter last year. They don't exactly have that this year. They're the 12th seed, last place team in the B division. I think that just given Churchill, how they're built this year, how they can play a scrappy game, and the fact that Churchill, has good depth and better goaltending. I'm rolling with them in 2 games to take this series home. As for Sanford and CPET has pulled off some shockers throughout this year, but I really like the way Sanford played as this season went along in the Winnipeg Free Press division. A team that didn't put up the most goals, but also in terms of defensive numbers, they were more so around the middle of the pack. CPET, less goals for this season, as well as 127 goals against, which is the second most given up in the league. One thing that CPET may have going for them is they are a pretty disciplined team. They were 4th in at least penalty minutes taken. I feel like their hope to win this series, one of their big hopes is that Sanford gets in the penalty trouble, given that they've taken the second most penalties in the league. But I just feel like Sanford, their top end talent, as well as their depth overall, I like it better compared to CPET's. I don't think that there's going to really be much from CPET to contain Cooper Roadwald in this series, as I think he's going to break free and have himself a big-time series here in round number 2. 40 points on the season, 25 goals for. But then they got other pieces around him that can score too. Goaltending hasn't been too bad. .896 save percentage for Liam Jones, which in this league, there's not many goaltenders with an above 900 save percentage, so that's pretty solid given that context. And yeah, I just think Sanford's going to have too many pieces for CPET to contain in this series, and I got Sanford moving on in 2 games. As for Gabriel and SJR, we've seen them before get great goaltending performances, but I just don't think it's going to be enough in this series against the Gabriel Raw Cavaliers, a team that's led by, of course, their all-star, their superstar forward in terms of course, Logan Barnaby. But this is also a Gabriel team that defends pretty well, middle of the pack in terms of goals against in the league. 4th in goals for, and a big reason for that was the play of Logan Barnaby. But when just taking a look at the rest of their depth, even though he had 32 goals, Colin Legacy had 11 goals. Oscar Lanford had himself 10 goals. And then down the line, there's decent depth on this Gabriel team. Goaltending-wise, the numbers aren't great, but Derek Poirier gave them a shutout this season in his 13 games played, so he's definitely able to do the job. And I guess I just take a look at a team like the SJR Eagles, who have the second least goals for in the league and have given up the, 4th most goals against in the league. Only 5 wins this season. I do know, of course, playoffs is a totally different game, but yeah, I just look at Gabriel, their high-end scoring, having the best player in this league. I think that their goaltending will be up to par enough to help them out in this series, and I could see them breaking these games open against an SDR team, which I just don't feel like they'll have enough answers to try to limit that top-end line. And, well, I think as the series goes along, Gabriel takes over and takes this series in about 2 games over SJR. But SJR, I think the blueprint for them to be able to win and move forward would be you got to have one of your goaltenders steal the game, and you got to be able to, well, of course, try your best to limit that top line. But overall, you need to see your group find another level that I just don't think they've been able to quite get to this season. So Gabriel moves on for me into the next round, where we go into the quarterfinals. So Louis Riel would be facing off against the 8th-seeded J.H. Bruns Broncos. The Calvin Clippers taking on the Churchill Bulldogs. 2nd seed in the Springfield Sabres, who had themselves a fantastic season, taking on the Sanford Sabres in a Sabres versus Sabres matchup. And then the Lancers take on the Gabriel Cavaliers. Lou Riel and J.H. Bruns, I feel like this is where the road ends for J.H. Bruns. You're going up against not only the highest powered offensive team in the league, but a team with so many pieces outside of just a few that can beat you, and a team that has been one of the better defensive teams in the league this season, too, in terms of Lou Riel. When we take a look at the season the defending Price Division champs had, they gave up only the third least goals against in the league for an unreal goals differential of 121. I just think they have too much offense. They play a well enough structured game to be able to, I think, shut down J.H. Bruns consistently as the series goes along. J.H. Bruns, they got to hope for gaffes defensively in this series from Lou Riel, and how they're going to do it, well, they got to play a hard, fast brand of hockey. Got to be really good on the forecheck, winning your battles down low and making the most out of your offensive opportunities. But Lou Riel, they're dangerous off the rush, they're dangerous off of the cycle, and like I said, I just think they'll have too much for J.H. Bruns to handle in this series. As for Churchill and Calvin, as the winner of this series would go on to face Lou Riel unless there's an upset on the other half of the bracket, as the highest seed takes on the lowest seed remaining, as they reseed after each round to be able to line it up that way. But yeah, Calvin and Churchill, both teams similar numbers defensively. Calvin has had a lot more offense in their game this year, with over 90 goals, compared to Churchill having 73 goals for. Calvin obviously has the better goals for, goals against differential, but a stat where they're leading in that could potentially come back to bite them come playoff time is they are easily, well, not easily actually, it's them and Sanford that are neck and neck in penalty minutes, but 380 penalty minutes for Calvin, 378 for Sanford. Calvin, their 380 is going up against the 138 penalty minutes that Churchill has. So Churchill, a much more disciplined team this season, and a team which you can argue they may have the edge in goaltending heading into this series, just given how good Devin Picklick has played this season. When we take a look at how these teams matched up against each other in their season series, Calvin won in the most recent matchup, I believe it was in overtime back on December 12th against Churchill, when Churchill lost against them 3-2 in the first game of the season series back on November 26th. So both these teams played really close, really competitive games against each other. Like I said, I think there's solid depth on Churchill. When you take a look at Calvin, given that they were one of the top teams in goal scoring this season in the Winnipeg Free Press Division, in terms of their depth, they also have solid depth, and the highest goal scorer in this series in Elijah Mickelson. But this season, when I've watched Calvin, there's been moments where it's like, man, this looks like the most dominant team in the league, and then there's other moments where there's been quite a few gaffes for this team. We've seen them blow a lead before here during our coverage this season, and I look at that and the fact that they're going to be resting. Churchill is going to have a series under their belt heading into this one. And the fact that both of these teams have played close games, it's very hard to beat a team, I feel like, 3, even 4 times in a season when you've been able to beat them before, given how close the season series truly was between these two teams. I look at those factors, I feel, honestly, more comfortable with Devin Picklick in net than anybody in this series, and given how hard Churchill plays, they're never quite out of a game, given that they have solid depth, I feel like this could be a series where maybe they draw a bunch of penalties too. If that power play can get going, that'll do them wonders in this series. I feel like there's a lot of elements here for a potential upset. I think that this is a well-coached Churchill team too that can find ways to limit some of the top-end talent that this Calvin Clippers team has. I think it's going to be a close series, but I think I'm going to go with an upset here and pick Churchill, just given that they played better and better as the season went along. Um, Calvin, I don't think they're exactly a lock to make it in to the Final Four. I think out of the top four seeds, they're probably the most vulnerable on paper, comparing them to, the teams above them in the top three. And all of those factors being taken into account, I'm going to roll with Churchill to pull off the upset win in this series in 3 games to book a date into the next round, into the Final Four. What a story that could be. But also, wouldn't be surprised if Calvin, if they're able to find their game and put their game into another gear, maybe this is a team that is able to be similar to Shaftesbury last year, right? Not exactly being a top three seed, but being able to put it all together come playoff time. Really excited for how that series is going to go, and excited to see the Battle of the Sabres, Sanford against Springfield. I think Springfield, unless they don't come with their A game in this series, I think that this team is going to make it by into past the Sanford Sabres. You just look at Springfield, second most goals for in the league, second lowest goals against totals too. A team that plays the game hard, a team that plays the game fast, a team that is led, of course, by the top point getter in the B division this season in Toby Hobday, but they got other pieces outside of him that can hurt you. 3 different 20-goal scorers, 2 other goal scorers with at least 10 goals, and then, just throughout their lineup, a bunch of depth. Their goaltending has been pretty solid for the most part this season by the numbers, but one thing that stands out is this is a team that really doesn't give up many shots at all. As this season, Carter Husel only faced 200 shots, and Trey Robertson faced 236 shots against this year. It's pretty easy for me to pick this series, just given that, Sanford, comparing them to the Sabres, the offense is lacking by quite a bit. They are at a disadvantage there. They're going to need to hope that I think their goaltender comes up huge in this series no matter which one they play. But I think in the end, Springfield is just going to have too much offense or going to be too strong overall for Sanford to handle. And I got Springfield heading onto the semifinals into the next round, where they'd either get, Dakota, or if Gabois is able to pull off the upset the way we have it lined up, they would end up facing off against Churchill. But, Dakota, I think similar to Sanford, or to Springfield, I think that they're just too much to handle on paper for this Gabois Cavaliers team. A Gabois Cavaliers team which, like I said, outside of Logan Barnaby, they do have players that can put the puck into the back of the net, and they do have decent depth given that context. But I feel like if Dakota finds a way to limit Logan Barnaby's line, just given how strong and deep Dakota is, how good they play defensively, this is a team that gave up 43 goals against this season in 24 games played. By far the best totals out of any team in the league. The only team that had less goals against was Springfield at 55. And then I also take a look at Dakota, 121 goals for, which ranks third in the Winnipeg Free Press division this year. And then you look beyond just the general numbers. This is a team that, not as high-powered offensively compared to a team like Springfield, but a team with 2 players that have over 20 goals and then 3 others with at least 10 goals. And overall, the depth on this team, there hasn't been many players that haven't scored this year. I just think that in this series, Gabois them being a team that's relied on one player to do most of their scoring for this season. Dakota, they're a very well coached team. If they're able to neutralize that top line and they can't quite get going, I think Gabriel is in trouble. And I think how this series plays out is exactly that. I think that Dakota makes it through with just a stronger overall team, stronger overall numbers. I think that plays out in this series, and they make it past the Gabwa Cavaliers to set up what would be a Final Four, if our predictions are right, of Louis Riel Voyageurs taking on the Churchill Bulldogs in one semifinal, and then in the other semifinal, it'll be the Springfield Sabres taking on the Dakota Lancers. I think this is where the run for Churchill ends. I think Louis Riel, they're going to be a really tough out for any opponent, but I just think that Louis Riel, their personnel, the amount of offense they have, the complete game that they play is just going to overwhelm Churchill throughout this series, and I think that Louis Riel is going to make it through in 2 games to face off against the winner of Springfield and Dakota. Before we get into who I think is going to win that and who I think is going to be the B Division champion, we're going to throw it to a promo screen to give myself and yourself a little break here before we get back on this edition of the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast, Scholasticks. Enjoy, everybody. A little time off here before we get right back into it. And welcome back into the Scholastics podcast as we're into our Final Four predictions for the B Division bracket on G-Show's picks. I have Louis Riel making it through to the finals against Churchill in one of the semifinals. In this other semifinal, which I think this could potentially be the series of the playoffs in the B Division, it's 2 and 3 going up against each other. The second seed and the Springfield Sabres taking on the third seed and the Dakota Lancers. Both of these teams split their season series, and both games were played before the break, so back in 2025 compared to 2026. Of course, Springfield, as this season has gone along, they've continued to play better and better. Dakota, they've kept up their consistency in terms of their defensive play. And it's just going to be, I think, a really close series and a really tough series to call, quite honestly. I think this one goes either way, as many of these series can. But man, just looking at the way Springfield was able to end their season, they're a tough team to pick against. The only team this season to defeat College Louis Riel in league play as well. The top point getter in the league as well belongs to Springfield. They got a bunch of depth. Their leading point getter, of course, being Toby Hobday, and a team that also defends really well, doesn't give up that many shots against. Comparing that to Dakota, who is a notch above them defensively in terms of their numbers against, goals against, that is, and a team that themselves has maybe not exactly a superstar like Toby Hobday, but pretty good players nonetheless for this Dakota Lancers team. As I mean, just looking at the players that put up big time numbers for Dakota, Triton Judry as well as Declan Meikle, both with over 20 goals. Cruz Augustino, Carson Hodnett with 14 goals each, and then Jackson Mirdu too had 10 goals on the season. So yeah, both teams have really good depth. Both teams play really good defensive hockey. Both are, pretty much on par in terms of the shots that they've given up this season. But I look back at just the aspect of the defense that Dakota has, and I feel like in this series, Brady Cawson or Ethan Sinclair are both capable of going out and being the difference makers capable for their squads. They got 9 shutouts combined between them both, and I'd say it's most likely the best tandem of goaltenders in the Winnipeg Free Press Division in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. So taking that into account, and also that Dakota, I think, has the depth, the skill up front to compete with the Springfield Sabres team. Of course, the numbers aren't as good on that side of things for Dakota, but still, I think that Dakota has enough offense to be able to do the job. And I think the big difference in this series, like I said, is I think they're a better defensive team. I think they got better goaltenders, and I think that that's going to play out in this series. Unless, the offense from Springfield is able to show out at a high level, their top guys are able to get theirs, and, their goaltenders end up being able to outperform the netminders on the other side. But, yeah, goaltending-wise, defensive-wise, and depth-wise, I think that Dakota is right there with Springfield in a lot of cases, and I think that this is going to be a hard-fought, well-coached series where I think I'm going to give the edge to Dakota to make it into the finals, where they would be facing off against the Louis Voyageurs. And I've been struggling to make this pick, honestly. I don't think it's going to be easy by any means for Louis to try to capture what would be their second championship in 2 years. Dakota, like I mentioned, the best defensive team in this league, probably the best tandem of goaltenders to a team that has come within, I think, a goal each time of beating this Louis Voyageurs team. Like I said, it's very tough to beat a team 3, even 4 times in the season, which that's what Louis is going to need in this series to do, right? Like, they'll need to be able to win 2 games, much like, Dakota or anyone is in this situation to be able to get a championship, right? I think Dakota has a very good shot in this series. I would not be surprised if they end up upsetting and claiming the championship. But that being said, I think I'm going to roll with the Louis Voyageurs to win the championship this season. I just can't ignore the offense this team has. And not only that, but a team that is better defensively this season, I think, compared to last year's C Division winners. I think that Coach Augustino will have his group ready, will play Robert Lafreniere's Louis Voyageurs very tough. But I think I roll with Louis in this series just because of how deep they are offensively, how star-studded they are offensively, how they can defend not as high of a level as Dakota, but I think that just the amount of offense they have, it's even more compared to what Springfield has. I think that for Louis, yeah, with all of those pieces, all of that context, putting all that into consideration, I think that they do come home with the championship this season and are able to beat the Dakota Lancers in what I think is going to be a 3-game series where I think Louis just edges them out. But don't get it twisted. I think that it could go either way. And I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, to see Dakota come home with the championship win. But I think Louis, this group is truly special, and I think they're going to cap it off with a championship this season. So our predictions to this point in terms of our championship winners, Vincent Massey in the A, and then our first 1 seed that we're calling to be a champion in the Louis Voyageurs. Let me know what your thoughts are, what your picks would be in the upcoming Winnipeg Free Press Division bracket, which, of course, in the Winnipeg Free Press Division, they will be starting today, as there's going to be 3 series in play. 3 series in play tomorrow as well, and then 2 games on Thursday. We may very well be doing one of these games tomorrow instead if we're unable to make it into Steinbach, but we'll have to wait and see what the weather tells us by tomorrow. Toby Hobday looking to be a huge piece of his team, their success in these playoffs is 68 points in 24 games played, one more than Luca Tatro, who, of course, the leading point getter for Louis Riel for yet another season. Niverville, their second season in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League in the Price Division. It's been a special one for them, even though the ending to their season was a bit disappointing, given that they kind of got blown out twice against Lorette. But playoffs, it's a whole new season, and like I said, anything can happen. We're going to throw it to a commercial break, and then we'll have the predictions for the C Division playoffs for you coming up next, who we think is going to come home with the Price Division Championship on this edition of Scholasticks on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
Welcome back to the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast, Scholasticks. Got a busy day ahead, Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans, as that's nothing new. But excited for Miles Mack and Sturgeon Heights today, which is going to be the start of our quarterfinals. Winnipeg High School Hockey League Platinum Promotions Division coverage. May have a game in B Division this week. That wasn't the plan initially, but if we're unable to make it out to Steinbach tomorrow for CGS and Steinbach, we will have to change course. But we will have an update on that by tonight. I'm hoping by tonight, maybe by tomorrow, as it may be a close call, a game time decision type of thing. But game time just about to get going in the Price Division for the playoffs, as there's going to be 4 series that are going to be in play today, 3 games tomorrow, and then Kildonan East gets John Taylor for their Game 2 on Thursday, where that's going to be in Gateway Rec Center. As for the points leaders here in the C Division, Anderson Fisher, 56 points as a D-man. Unbelievable season from him. I'd say he's played his way into not only top defenseman in the Price Division, but could very well see him taking home Price Division MVP. What a season there for Lyndon Christian's captain in Anderson Fisher. As for Mason Clausen, another great season for him. .941 save percentage and only, 3 losses, a 13-3 record with 4 shutouts as well. Could Mason Clausen, the defensive play of the Warren Wildcats, be enough for them to be able to make it back to the finals this year? They were the finalists last year. It will be a new finals matchup no matter what, as Lou Riel was the Price Division champions last year. Of course, they've moved up into the Winnipeg Free Press Division this year. But it's Niverville, Lorette, Warren, and West K who all get first-round byes. We're going to start on the right side of the bracket this time around. Beausejour Barons and the Windsor Park Royals going at it in the 7 versus 10 series. For the Barons this season, they had themselves some big wins. Most recently, near the end of the regular season, they were able to take down the West K Wolverines. Finished off their season with a close loss in a shootout last Thursday against Kildonan East, losing there. Lost 7-1 to Warren on Monday. So they're heading into the playoffs with 2 losses in a row. West K was also able to get their revenge against them 2 Thursdays ago at this point. But before that, Edward Schreier was able to put up a 4-1 victory against Pinawa in terms of their matchups against Windsor Park this season. A 6-3 win back on January 12th in the second game of the season series, and then in the first game of the season series between these two sides, Edward Schreier won in a shootout. I definitely think that Windsor Park isn't going to be a pushover in this series. This has been a team that, this year has gotten great contributions from their top-end talent in terms of, Carson St. Lawrence and Justin Riel both being over points per game, as well as Nicholas Jones and Kyle Morose. So they do have some players that can definitely hurt you, but I just feel like overall, this is a team that gives up way too many shots in terms of Windsor Park. A team this season where many times when we've seen them haven't exactly come out the strongest, and because of that have found themselves in deep holes that they've been able to really dig themselves out of. But I just feel like in this series, even though, the season series between these teams, when taking a look at the score, or the scoring, it was closer than maybe, you would have thought if you didn't look at the scores before. But Edward Schreier, team that is over 500 this season, going up against a Windsor Park team that was near the bottom 3 of all major statistical categories, and also a team in Windsor Park that, has found themselves in penalty trouble this season. I just don't see a way where they beat the Barons if they come in at the top of their game, which they'll be looking to do. And yeah, I got the Barons moving through in 2 games because of that, because of those facts. To face off against who, would be the Lorette Scorpions into the next round. Into the other series on this right side of the bracket, Linden Christian and the Pinawa Panthers. For Pinawa, this is the most disciplined team in C Division. Linden Christian, they've taken over 300 penalty minutes, but when I take a look at the goals differential, it's not even close against these teams. Negative 104 for Pinawa. They're one of 2 teams only that has a negative goal differential in the triple digits. And then I look at Linden Christian, they're at a +9, a team that not only defends way better compared to Pinawa, but a team with way more offense, as Pinawa ranks bottom of the Price division in goals for this year with 32. I like the structure that Coach Mike Fisher has this team playing with this season in terms of Linden Christian, a team that, of course, has the best defenseman and arguably the best player in the league in Anderson Fisher, and I think that they just got too much depth, too much for Pinawa to handle, and will make short work of them to face off against who would be the Warren Wildcats in the next round. On to the left side of the bracket, we'll start at the bottom. Murdoch McKay, 5th place team. They've been able to make some statements throughout this year. I think a team that is very well contender this year. Not only that, but a team that I think could surprise some folks come playoff time. They're getting Lundar, who has by far the worst goals against differential in the league, with by far the most goals against in the league given up, as they've given up 174 goals for, compared to who has the second most given up in the Pinawa Panthers at 136. More offense compared to Pinawa, a team that has also been way more disciplined compared to Murdoch McKay, who Murdoch is the most penalized team in the Price division this season with almost 400 penalty minutes at 396. As for Pinawa, or for Lundar, as I should say, second least penalized team in the league at 258 penalty minutes. But I don't think, even if Lundar is able to get on the power play, a lot of times it's just I don't feel like they have that consistency to make Murdoch pay at a high level on throughout this series. I think that Murdoch, based off their depth, based off of having better goaltending in this series, I don't think that the penalty trouble will really get them into trouble if they start to load up the box. And yeah, I think that overall they're going to make short work out of Lundar, unless Lundar finds a totally different game. But yeah, I just feel like Murdoch has too much depth, too much speed, and is better, way better all around compared to Lundar, and I got them moving forward into the quarterfinals. Last series to call here would be John Taylor and Kildonan East. John Taylor, I think the key to their success, obviously, you're going to need your goaltending to step up big time. We know Gage Edgington is more than capable of that. Based off of the matchups we've seen him in this year in big time moments. Big reason why they've been able to have the success they've had this year is because of their netminder and the goaltending they've had this season. When you take a look at the statistics of this John Taylor team, a team that has some decent depth. I know last time I watched, I don't believe their leading point getter, their goal scorer, and Chase McDonald was in the lineup. Didn't stay fully healthy this season, so his absence in this series, if he's not there, could be a big determining factor in this one. But of course, Gage Edgington, he's going to be ready to go. Had himself a really good season with an 8-6 record. So depth isn't bad from John Taylor. When you take a look at how they matched up against Kildonan East throughout this season, just looking back at the statistics, we're able to beat them 6-3 back on January 13th, and then the matchup before, they were able to defeat Kildonan East 5-2. That was back on December 3rd. And yeah, for Kildonan East, this is a team that didn't have a great start to the season at all. Lost 8-0, then 7-0 against, well, that 8-0 matchup against Kildonan, or against West K. Just one sec. That was their second matchup of the season. They lost their first matchup of the season 8-0 to the Warren Wildcats. But as the season has gone along, look, Kildonan East has been able to compete with some of the best teams here in the league. They gave Niverville 2 really good games, and I feel like as the season's gone along, they've gotten more of their depth going. Brady Patton has proven that he's more than capable of holding his team within a game, and I feel like when taking a look at both of these teams going into an 8-9 series, this is probably going to be the closest first round series when taking a look at the C division. Just based off of how strong Kildonan East played to end off this season, given that they're playing some of their best hockey at the right time, given how physical this team can play, I think I'm rolling with them in this series to take down the John Taylor Pipers. Kildonan East finished their season with 2 straight victories. We're able to build some confidence with some big blowout wins. And yeah, I just like the way that they play, how hard they are on the boards. They've gotten good goaltending throughout this season, and I think that may not be as good as Gage Edgington for the John Taylor Pipers, but I look at the Reavers' depth, and I think that I just like it overall a bit more compared to John Taylor, and I feel like that's going to matter in a series that's going to be as close as this one. So I got Kildonan East moving forward into the next round, winning this series in 3 games. As for The quarterfinals will start on the left side of the bracket this time. And, well, playoffs are a different beast altogether. And Niverville's had themselves one heck of a season. I mean, to do this in your second year as a program, to lock up first place, to be the first seed in the Price division to build off of last year is just. I think it's something that this program has to really be proud of, and no matter how these playoffs go, you look back at this season as a huge success because I'm not even sure if anyone really expected them to be at the top, but here they are, a team with way more experience compared to last year of playing with each other, a team that's gotten really good goaltending throughout this season from their female goaltender in Charlie McKenzie, and of course their number one in Levi Brandt. They got many pieces that can beat you, but I feel like as the season has gone along, Kildonan East has a lot of pieces that have been able to show that they can beat you too. When you take a look at Kildonan East roster, Josh Kazak, 22 goals leading the way, 13 goals from Michael Lusty, 11 from Owen Neufeld, 12 from Lucas Herrera, 10 from Kingston Admonson, and then it continues to go down the line. They get scoring not only from their forwards, but from the back end as well. And like I mentioned, I feel like a player like Brady Patton is kind of playing his best hockey at the most important time of the season. You look at how both of these matchups went in the regular season series. Even though Niverville was able to come away with 2 wins, they weren't easy games by any means, and they were kind of slipping heading into the playoffs too, right? When I take a look at this Niverville squad, just taking a look at the pieces they have, they have great depth themselves. 4 different goal scorers with over 10 goals at least, but it's not like they got players that all have over 10 goals, right? It's still a team that I'm trying to find the right words. It's a team that I guess they have a lot of depth, a lot of high-end talent, but you take a look at Kildonan East, and I think that their depth is something that has been big time for them as the season has gone along too. Their players have continued to play better and better as the season has gone along, and I think that this is a team that can go out and test this Niverville Panthers squad and push them to the brink, and a team that I think being able to get by John Taylor in whatever fashion they may do it is going to build a lot of confidence for them heading into this round. And I think just because of riding off of momentum, just given how Niverville didn't have the strongest end to the end of their season, even though they went up against, a team like Lorette, who's like the second best, maybe arguably even the best team in this league. I do think that Kildonan East compared to Niverville is played better hockey to end off this season heading into the postseason, the final games of the regular season here in the Price division. So given that, and given the hard style of hockey that Kildonan East plays with, I think that they have the recipe and the tools to go out and pull off this upset, especially if they're able to just continue putting shots on the Niverville netminder. This is a team that defended very well this season, didn't give up as many shots as compared to other teams in this league. If Kildonan East is able to figure out their counterattack, which I think they will in this series, put pressure on the Niverville D, they can make mistakes, and I think that Kildonan East will be all over that. And I think that I see a big performance from their goaltender in this series to be able to get them out into the next round, into the Final Four, as I got Kildonan East pulling off what would be, the biggest upset to this point in the playoffs, taking down the number 1 seed in the Niverville Panthers. Could see it going either way, and obviously Niverville has a strong case to be making it to the championship. But I just feel like regular season and playoffs, it's a different animal. not as many calls get called in the postseason as well. I think it suits a physical type of team like Kildonan East, who's proven to have good offense this season in their team as it's gone along. Not only one piece that can beat you, but many. Not on the level on paper compared to the Niverville Panthers in that sense, but I think that if Brady Patton is able to go out and put on the best performance of his life, which it's going to be needed to beat Niverville, I think that they have a real chance to win this series, and that's why I got them winning in 3 games. As for West Kildonan and Murdoch McKay, these are 2 teams that also had 2 close games in their season series, and, for West K, a team that was in the A division last year, finds a home in the C division and is able to have themselves a really good season, finishing top 4 and getting by. For West K, a team that this season has been led by a plethora of players on their squad that have been difference makers. Most notably, looking at a guy like Luke Benera, who led the team with 24 goals. Colton Loreth had 18 goals. Layden Neville had 13 goals for himself, too. And then Evan Nishi with 12 goals. And pretty solid depth overall for this squad with really good goaltending. Mateo Diaz could very well be the difference maker in this series, as he had a .905 save percentage, which is really good in the C division, just given how much scoring gets done in this league. But yeah, O'Shea Ramos has also been a solid goaltender for this squad, who's gotten most of the starts with a 10-4 record, 2 shutouts, and 894 save percentage. When you take a look at the season series between these 2 teams, they actually played each other in the last game of the season against each other back on February 11th on Wednesday last week, where West K came out with a 3-2 victory in OT. And in their first matchup against each other, which ended up happening, I think, before 2026, it saw Murdoch winning 3-2. Actually, that happened at the beginning of 2026. So both games have been played pretty recently, all things considered, between these 2 sides. It's 2 teams that have pretty similar numbers when you just take a look at the standings. We'll pull those up right now for you on the screen. But 120 goals for compared to the 109 that Murdoch has. They had 7 more goals against compared to West K, where, in terms of penalty minutes, Murdoch obviously the more penalized team, but a group that, at the end of the day has played West K very tough this season, and I feel like with it being a split in the season series, this one could go either way. In the postseason series, I personally see this one going 3 games, a hard-fought, hard-checking series between these 2 sides. But I think I'm going to go with... because there's really great arguments, really strong arguments for both these teams to make it through. I think on paper, West K is... their stats a bit cleaner this season compared to Murdoch McKay. But what I really like from Murdoch McKay is just, of course, how hard this team plays, but also this team has themselves really good depth throughout their lineup. They also have a 20-goal scorer, and I believe actually they have the only 20-goal scorer in this series in terms of Brody Krellin. Leonardo Phelps had himself 19 goals, 13 goals from Madden Bowman, 13 from Halen Weiss, 12 from Lucas LaRue, and then, after Lucas Murner, he had 10. There is a drop-off to 4, but overall, those are 6 players. 6, not 3, not 4, but 6 players that have at least over 10 goals, right? And those are all players you have to account for on the forward side of things, as those are all forwards. So I look at that and the fact that, Brady Tan's been pretty solid this season. Ryder Carnegie as well, as they're just below a 900 save percentage. I put all of that into account, and just the fact this here that I think that with both of these games in the season series being as close as they were, I think that they're going to lead to more close games throughout this series, and I just feel like Murdoch McKay on paper, again, has a bit better depth, and I feel like, I know I've talked about running penalty trouble and stuff like this, but I feel like, they're going to find a way to limit their penalties in this series and find a way to play a really hard game against this West Kildonan team to be able to pull off the upset and put themselves into the next round. Could see this series going either way, though, as West K, if they're able to get by, could very well find themselves in a great position to make it into the championship. But that'll be Murdoch McKay for myself, who will make it through, where they'd face off against Kildonan East with how I've got it predicted. As for Lorette and Beausejour, I'm going to make this one quicker than the other takes I've had, but Lorette isn't losing this series. I don't think they lose a game in this series. Yeah. I mean, this is a team that really pushed hard to almost make it in first place, missed out by 2 points against the, or I guess not making it over the Niverville Panthers into that first seed, but second least goals against in the league, second most goals for in the league, and a team that has so many pieces that can beat you, a team that plays with a lot of great pace, probably the most pace out of any team I've seen here in the league, as their MO is just to continue to drive into the zone and put up as many chances as they possibly can on you. For this Lorette team, I just don't think the Barons overall will have answers to be able to limit their high-end goal score, and I think Lorette's depth is going to take over in this series as well. And even if things break down, they got, I think, the best goaltending tandem in this league by the numbers. 7 shutouts combined between Cole Ellens and Carter Ellick. I think one of those two, no matter who starts, is going to bring their A game in this series. I don't think Beausejour has the personnel overall to go toe-to-toe with Lorette, throughout the fight in this quarterfinal. And yeah, I think there's too much working against Beausejour in this one. A lot of, I guess, travel time throughout this series too, and I think that Lorette will be well suited and ready for the challenge, and will bring their A game and be able to take down Beausejour to get into the next round. The Warren Wildcats and the Linden Christian Goldwings, or not the Goldwings, just the Linden Christian Wings. Well, that'd be kind of cool if they rename themselves to the Goldwings, but I think this is going to be a series that's going to be quite a battle between these two. As are all of these playoff series, most of them, I think we're going to get some great battles throughout this 2026 postseason. But yeah, I guess I look at Linden Christian coming in. This is a team that's been able to go out and beat top-end teams in this league this season. Going up against last year's finalists in Lachlan McLean's group in the Warren Wildcats, who, again this season, like last year, are the best defensive team in the league. Who have also been able to get some big-time performances from players like the Ty Olsons of the world this season, leading the way up front, as well as players like Braden Ivany. Ashton Baldwin has also been very good, right? Warren, like the other teams we've talked before, a very deep team with a team that does it more by committee, maybe compared to some of the teams here in the league. Going up against a Linden Christian Wings team who, like I said, big part of their team this year, their success has been, well, the production from their captain and Anderson Fisher, but just their overall structure has been really good. And this is a Linden Christian team who had two players with over 20 goals this season in terms of Jack Springer and Eden Schellenberg. If Linden Christian, if their goaltending in terms of Ashton Menzies Irwin, which I assume he's going to get the start throughout this series, if he's able to steal a game, um, and Warren's offense goes dry in this series, look, Warren could be in a lot of trouble just based off of how hard Linden Christian plays and, the pieces they have. They got players that can hurt you, right? Not just from their top end player on the back end and Anderson Fisher, but just taking a look at guys like Schellenberg and Springer, right? They're also going to have a series under their belt heading in. There's going to be a lot of travel time in this series, which, I think that makes game one even that much more important for Linden Christian, knowing that they'll most likely have to go out to Warren. But I was contemplating picking Linden Christian to pull off the upset, a well-coached team, a team with a lot to like around their top end talent too. It's just, for me, I think in this series, Warren's defense is going to come to play at a high level. I think that Mason Clausen, their goaltending, is going to be locked in, and I think that even though this team, compared to teams like the Niverville Panthers and the Lorette Scorpions, they don't have as much offense compared to them, I think they do have enough offense to get by in this series in the end to pull off the win against Linden Christian in a series which, honestly, could see it going 3 games. But I'm going to go with Warren winning in 2 close, low-scoring games to sweep and make it into the next round. But if Linden Christian can get a 2-goal lead on them, 1-goal lead, and build off of it, feeling like Warren, their MO to being able to have as much success in the playoffs as possible is playing in these defensive games. If Linden Christian can kind of get them out of that groove, that pattern, it could be their best chance of winning this series. But of course, they'll need their goaltender to come up big time. I do think that Warren has the overall goaltending and defensive edge in this series. Will have enough goal scoring, I think, to make it through past the Linden Christian Wings, as this would set up a Final Four of KE and Murdoch, as well as Lorette and Warren. We'll start off with the left side of the bracket. Look, both these teams are going to play hard. Both these teams are going to play a physical series. I feel like that school spirit is going to be absolutely unreal, too, just in terms of the support that these teams will have. Both on paper, honestly, very similar in terms of how their depth has looked this season. Both teams have spent quite a lot of time in the penalty box, so you can expect a chippy series with a whole bunch of possibilities. I do think at the end of the day, though, I'm rolling with Murdoch to make it through. I like them a bit better on paper overall compared to Kildonan East, but Kildonan East is going to have a lot of momentum riding into the series. If you're able to take down a first seed, that does wonders for your confidence. But, sometimes once that happens, maybe you get a bit too ahead of yourself and you have in your mind, like, we've beat the first place team in the league, right? Now we play the 5th place team. Like, this seems like it should be easier, just given that fact of them being a lower seed compared to the team that you just beat. I think that mentally in this series, Murdoch is going to come ready to play. And I think themselves, the road that they're going to go through playing in a hard-fought series against West Cape could do them wonders heading into this series. But I think for me, the reason why I lean with Murdoch is because I think that they're not going to be coming in off of as much of a high compared to Kildonan East. I think that they could be a bit more grounded heading into this series, and I think that could do wonders for them. I think that their depth, like I said, is is on the level compared to Kildonan East. It's been even better this season. I think that we're also going to see Murdoch's goaltending come to play too in this series. And I think that when I take a look at Murdoch compared to Kildonan East, when these teams have been at their best, I think that in terms of puck movement and puck management, Murdoch takes care of it a bit better, moves the puck a bit better compared to this Kildonan East team. But at the same time, Kildonan East, they have all the makings to be able to beat a team like Murdoch McKay if they're able to execute at their highest level. But I just think that Murdoch is a bit of a, I guess, cleaner team in the sense of just, puck movement, defensive play compared to Kildonan East. And I think that for those reasons, that's why I got Murdoch heading into the finals, where I got them going up against Lorette or Warren. I think this is where it ends for Warren. I think, obviously, with their defensive identity and Mason Clausen, his ability to steal games, like that is absolutely big time. That's huge and something that they got to bank on in this series. The problem is, I think that Lorette has two really good netminders themselves, a team that hasn't played as high of a level defensively compared to Warren this year, but has still played at a very high level in that area of the ice. And I just look at it offensively, and Lorette, when you take a look at the numbers, besides Niverville, the highest scoring team in this season this year, right? A better goal differential too, and a team that, special teams wise, not only do they have a really good power play, but penalty kill wise, we've seen them be able to put up some big time chances this season too, and benefit from that. Lorette had a really strong end to their season, even stronger than Warren, and really than anyone in this league, I'd say. And I just feel like in this series, their big time players offensively, paired with their defensive play and their goaltender's ability to lock in, is just going to be a bit too much for Warren, who, of course, has the best defensive team on paper here in the league, and you could argue the best goaltender in the league in Mason Clausen. But I do think where the lack of offense we've seen from them overall this season compared to the top-end teams is going to come back to bite them. That's why I got Lorette moving into the championship series round, where just trying to get to the final round prediction, and there it is. So this would set up Murdoch and Lorette into the finals. Murdoch, what a story it would be for them to make it through, going through the road that they would have to go through. Lorette, I'd say, the battle that they're going to have in that semifinal matchup, if they're able to win it, for themselves, they're going to have a ton of confidence heading into that final series against Murdoch McKay. But before we get into that and end off this show, we're going to send it to a promo screen, and then we'll be back here to let you know who we think is going to hoist the C Division, Price Division Championship this year on this edition of Scholasticks for episode 15. Welcome back into Scholasticks. We're just about done here, getting into, what my championship prediction would be for the Price Division. Went a bit off the board with these predictions. Kind of nervous that I picked against Niverville. Could very well see them rolling into the final, but I feel like a strong play of Kildonan East is going to carry them through to at least the semifinals with their hard style of hockey. How physical this team can play and the depth that they have. I just like Murdoch, how they stack up a bit better in a series like this compared to Kildonan East, but could be anyone's hockey game throughout that 3-game series if it ends up being that way for Lorette and Warren. That one could go either way as well, but I overall got Lorette moving through into the championship round where they would be, I think, a big favorite just based off of the season that they've had and being able to beat Warren. I feel like that's going to put the league, the fans on notice. But yeah, I mean, Lorette this season, I think you can make an argument they've been the most complete team throughout the season. Murdoch's been getting better and better as this year has gone along. But in the end, I feel like Lorette, their top end talent, is going to take over in this series. They've been so good in the net this season too with Ellens and Ellick. And then defensively, this is a team that can also get not only great execution in their own end, but their defense are able to jump up in the play and attack as a 5-man unit at such a high level. I just think that Murdoch, as good as their depth is, I don't think it's quite near the level compared to a team like Lorette. And I think Lorette, their top end talent, is a bit better on paper when looking at these two teams. And then goaltending wise and defensive wise, I think Lorette has the edge there as well. So if they come out and play their game and focus on the task at hand, I don't see really any world here where Lorette comes away as finalists for me. They are my C Division champion this year. As I think they'll be the last team left standing by the end of the Price Division playoffs, which, of course, will be starting this week. Very exciting, and, well, best of luck to all the teams competing this season in the Winnipeg Free Press Division, as well as the Price Division playoffs, which, of course, are starting today. Of course, for us, we have our first Platinum Promotions Division quarterfinals matchup to call today between Miles Mack and Sturgeon Heights. That should be a lot of fun. Hope that you spend the $7 to tune in. We also have a playoff promo code too, so all games are going to be set at $7 for the championship series. For all 3 divisions, they're going to be set at $10. If you want a bit of a deal, be sure to use our promo code PLAYOFFS26 to get 30% off any of your purchases this playoff season in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. But let me know what your thoughts are about my predictions. I saw that there was a message that got retracted in the live chat, kind of upset that I didn't have a chance to see that. I was too into the predictions here, and man, I mean, these are just for fun. I could be completely right. It's been proven too that I'm not going to go perfect with my predictions most likely if the Platinum Promotions Division predictions were any indication of that. Last week as went 3-5 in our predictions. But yeah, I'd love to hear who you guys think is going to win the championship in all 3 of these divisions, who you're rooting for, who you're pulling for, all that good stuff. So sure to leave some comments down below. Would love to hear from you guys. But yeah, next edition of the Scholastics podcast, we're hoping to have it out by the end of this week for episode 16, where we'll be going through everything that's happened in the playoffs to this point at that time. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this edition of the Scholastics podcast, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any future episodes similar to this one. And any of our other content that we post here too, you'll be able to be notified when different podcast episodes come out and whatnot. But busy day today for us on the network. Like I said, Miles Mack and Sturgeon Heights will have that matchup covered for you at Keith Bodley, which is going to be starting in under 2 hours now at 3 p.m. So I got to get going. We also have an MMJHL game day broadcast tonight. St. Boniface Riel's taking on the St. Vital Junior Victorias. All on our Uscreen platform, your home for playoff hockey in the leagues we cover this season in the Manitoba U22 hockey scene. But as for myself, Graham the G Show Forsyth, thank you so much for tuning into this one and hearing us ramble on about what we think is going to happen come playoff time here in the High School Hockey League, which, well, wouldn't you know it, we've already gotten underway, which I think that's very exciting in itself. But until next time, everybody, I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Thanking you again for tuning in, peacing out, and waving so long. This has been our playoff predictions show for the second time, as we've already given our playoff predictions last week for the Platinum Promotions division. Check out our Ustream service throughout the playoff time, as we'll have all of our matchups set on a week-by-week basis. But yeah, that's all for today, everybody. Take care. Thanks again for watching.